I suppose it's sort of trying to, or just allowing myself to drop into where that's coming from. And this actually, so this is something that's interesting because I think previously I would have gone, okay, what's the source of this? How can I change it? And now it's more of a dropping into sort of energetically, where's it coming from? How's it showing up? And then just being with that. And even bringing love to that and compassion to that without trying to force the outcome, without trying to. And there's a really different transformation that happens.
Really wanted to build on confidence. And I think it's a common theme, self-confidence, and that self-critic being quite loud. It's quite common. It's something that I really want to work with because it was quite prevalent, it was with me a lot. And as the mentoring sessions have gone, that name has become Bob. We've all become quite familiar with Bob with our time together. And for me, it was how to create a better relationship with Bob. Having that understanding that, I guess, Bob has been there for a reason, and just working with that. And also the realization that, I guess, coaching really just does work. And I think we kind of had that realization on our last mentoring session. We kind of all realized that, this actually does work.
Have you ever wondered what it truly takes to transform your life from the inside out? Well, in this episode, we dive deep into the heart of personal growth and transformation, exploring the power of coaching in overcoming inner critics and unlocking your full potential. Join us as we uncover real stories from Hugo and Jordan, two remarkable individuals who have taken the journey through the positive psychology coaching program. From Hugo's shift in understanding the essence of mind, body, and spirit work to Jordan's courageous battle with his inner critic, this conversation reveals how coaching goes beyond techniques. It's about nurturing the human experience, embracing vulnerability, and finding strength in presence. So if you're ready to discover the keys to personal mastery and lasting change, this episode is for you. Enjoy. So good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on what side of the planet you are sitting on at this very moment. We have some special guests for you. So I can't use the same line I used the last time we had a couple of our students on the show because it was our first time. So this is our second time, but we're doing it a little bit different. We've invited a couple of students, coaches, let me say, that are actually in the same group. So they can share their experience with you. Two complete strangers who didn't know each other prior to entering this coaching cohort. And I'd love to hear it from them, what they experienced throughout their journey. And so they're almost finished. I think they're up to I think it'll be your mentoring session number 8, I'm pretty sure by now. But before we get started, let's introduce them to you. So let's bring in Hugo. Hugo, welcome. If you wanted to introduce yourself a little bit and talk a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Thank you. Yes. So yeah, my name's Hugo. Started the coaching program quite a few months ago now. And I suppose beforehand or outside of that, I do energy work, mind, body, spirit energy work. And I was really interested in bringing coaching into that and deepening that skill set. And that's what I do outside of this. And I do also a bit of disability support work, a bit of delivery driving, a few odd jobs on the side. That's a bit about me.
Beautiful. Welcome. Thank you. Jordan, over to you. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thanks for having me. So for me, I've spent the past 12, 13 years now within the construction industry. During that time, completed a couple apprenticeships, one being plumbing, one being electrical. But at the end of the day, it was just never really fulfilling for me. I felt like I just wanted more, felt like I could do a bit more and offer more. And then I kind of just found my way to the coaching program, which started about October, I think, last year. So here we are.
Amazing. Welcome, welcome. So, as you can see, for those that are listening or watching, very different backgrounds. And so you can see that this is going to be a juicy conversation. So, I would like to start with, let's get right into it. I'd love to hear more about, obviously, I get the pleasure of sitting in the group and absorbing the magic that takes place. But I really want to understand some of the shifts because everyone keeps on asking me what exactly happens in these mentoring sessions. So I would like to go, I'll go to you, Hugo, if you'd like to maybe talk about some of the transformations that you have observed and experienced.
Sure. Okay, just let me think here for a moment. I think one that happened for me that was actually happened quite recently. I brought up something that was quite vulnerable for me, and I felt just had a lot of emotional charge around it. And it was had this whole narrative or this whole frame of how things were. And that just very gently was getting unraveled or pulled apart, and seeing that these rules or sort of ways of behaving or thinking or what other people think was really transformed. And I'm still in the process of it sort of breaking free from certain limits. And so that's one I'm still digesting, but that was a very potent one for me. And then in terms of seeing what has happened for other people, I think it's been a development in confidence I've seen in other people in the group, and certainly someone else taking a career opportunity and going for that. And the development, I think, of presence and listening and being much more human, I think, has been the sort of key elements or takeaways that I've gotten from this.
I love that, and actually triggered me in the word human, because I remember you shared with us in the group once that with all these modalities that you do, it's not about the process, but it's about the human, which I absolutely love. Did you want to unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got into mind, body, energy work, all of that, and I was really fascinated by the methods. I wanted to know, what's the method that you do to get the transformation? And I was particularly interested in, what do you do when all hell breaks loose, your nervous system's going haywire? What's something that you can do now to actually bring that in now, rather than, years and years of work to eventually one day feel okay? It's like, how do you deal with the moment of crisis? And so I was really invested in method, modality. That was my framework. And as I was learning that, I was running into a few limitations that I couldn't quite figure out. I didn't quite have the vocabulary for it yet. And gradually what I found was that, yes, technique is phenomenal, methods are phenomenal, but the underlying piece is consciousness, and it is the energy or the vibe, I suppose, the safety that you bring when you're working with someone, or even when you're working on yourself. Because you can use the most incredible method, but if it's not brought with kindness and openness and listening, it either doesn't work very well, or, in some cases, what can heal can harm. And so that was a really big shift that has been, incremental as I've noticed it bit by bit. The first bit was noticing, you can do a lot of this just through intention and consciousness. And then it was, even below using intention and consciousness is that presence, is that I'm here. And, certainly when I think about, shamans and yogis and these people who do extraordinary things, yes, you've got the techniques, but the thing that I think really draws us to those people is their presence. Is that they can just sit and they've got this energy about them that we don't really have words for. And what sort of helped really deepen that understanding in the coaching was that it was conversational, it was asking questions, it was really listening without trying to impose some method. And if the method does come about, it's from the person, it's from the coach. And that was such a mind-blowing revelation when it came, because I was so much in the headspace of going, if you want to process stress, you need to do this, and these are the things, and these are the frameworks. And then I was saying, hang on, like sometimes what came through was maybe you should just like write a letter to your past or future self. And part of my brain was going, yeah, but like, what about the stress in the nervous system and how that's going to relate? And, you know, but then I was seeing the results, and I had this real moment of, hey, I'm not getting something here. The framework that I have is not matching up with reality. So then I was like, oh, yes, that's good. But really, you need to step back and go, well, what comes from within is the most appropriate medicine. And that was such a phenomenal moment, and something that has really just affected how I work on myself, you know, rather than going, okay, I need to, you know, do this method or this process. I'm like, no, hang on. What's calling from within? And that's made the whole process much more nourishing and kind, and something that's just a lot more flexible and sort of honors the humanity, rather than saying there's this human and there are problems that we're going to try and fix. It's listen, pay attention, what's there. And it's those things that I think that we can so easily say but not get. You know, I feel like it's sort of like if you're very young and you use the word love, you kind of get it, but it's a very different feeling than when you're 20 to when you're 40, you know, when you're 100. There's a much more profound understanding that comes through. And I think that has been happening in that understanding of presence and listening, and the potency of that as something that is both transformative and honoring of the human in that moment.
Oh, so beautifully said. It's in the being, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
actually in the being, in the present moment, which is easier said than done. It's not till we actually allow ourselves to be, which is, it's an uncomfortable position to be, isn't it? I think I can speak for all of us that we've sat there, and to actually be with what is uncomfortable, and allowing that to surface and be seen, that is uncomfortable. And then working with that in itself, it's very transformative, isn't it? Very different. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's beautiful. So Jordan, I'm going to go over to you. If you can share some of your biggest insights or your shifts that you've experienced, or also experienced for yourself, but within the group as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I kind of came into this really wanted to build on confidence. And I think it's a common theme, self-confidence, and that self-critic being quite loud. It's quite common. It's something that I really want to work with, because it was quite prevalent, you know, it was with me a lot. And as the mentoring sessions have gone, that name has become Bob. We've all become quite familiar with Bob with our time together. And for me, it was how to create a better relationship with Bob. You're having that understanding that, I guess, Bob has been there for a reason, and just working with that. And also the realization that, I guess, coaching really just does work. And I think we kind of had that realization on our last mentoring session. You know, we kind of all realized that, you know, this actually does work, you know, and the power of the mind, you know, what you can do with that. So yeah, it's been an incredible experience.
As you were saying that, Jordan, I just remember Hugo saying, this shit really does work. It really does work.
Exactly. We kind of just realized, we're like, wow, this is it. This is working. Do you know what I mean? We all kind of came out and we're like, this is perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely is perfect. And that's why I always say I get to be in presence of such awe of what takes place, and also seeing you both grow and evolve. And I love the fact, Jordan, that you talked about confidence, because that's something that we quite commonly shy away from. And I see that mostly a lot of the times it's almost like, it's funny, it's just the other day we were having that conversation. It's almost like something you don't talk about, that I need confidence or I lack confidence, because it's almost like we've been conditioned, and depending on, I don't want to talk about gender here, but it really depends on as well how you've been brought up and how we've been conditioned. But it's almost like to actually say, I actually don't feel confident, and be authentic and stand in your truth and be okay with that. That is okay. And we were talking about this before we came on the show, and I think it's really important for us to maybe bring this into the show as well, is that we are, and I always say this, we are creatures of love, truth, and light. And when we go outside of that, and we're talking about the perfect triangle, when we step outside of that, we then create these barriers for ourselves, right? We create even more distance from ourselves. But when we start letting go of some of these layers that, like Jordan was talking about, the inner critic, Bob, when we start, because you can't kill Bob, you can't get rid of Bob, and you can't drown Bob. I mean, I've tried to do that with mine. We can't. It's about how do we integrate these psychological archetypes when they show up. And when you do, the integration part is beautiful, because then you become more aligned of who you are, and understand that these are just, it's almost like clothing that, a piece of clothing that we've held on to for quite a long time, and we take this jacket off, and that's one layer. I mean, there's many more layers. And so I love the fact you brought that up. And there's real strength in standing in your truth. It's hard to do. It's not easy to say, this is how I feel. To even saying it among strangers, one, but then I've seen the transformation, people saying things like, I don't feel comfortable, I don't feel confident. What about if they will think this? What about if they will say that? But these are all narratives that live in our mind. But when we step away from our mind into our heart, and that's where the real transformation takes place too. So I love the fact that you both brought this up. What I'd love to see is, how have you, and I'll go back to you, Hugo, how have you transferred that information into, because you were talking about that you've applied for yourself, so when you do a self-coaching, but in what other areas, whether it's personal or professional, have you seen you transfer that information out of these mentoring sessions that you've experienced, out into your world?
I think something that is still in the initial phases is, whenever I'm in conversation, I think I'm listening much more, and I'm much more aware of when I'm asking a question and how that question's being asked. And if I'm just, saying what I think instead of actually trying to understand what the other person's saying. So I'm just very aware of those dynamics playing out. And yes, certainly just doing inner work has changed in that regard. And I think those are the two key elements that come to mind for me. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Hugo. What about you, Jordan? How have you transferred your information out of the mentoring sessions into your personal or professional life as well?
So like for me, one thing that stood out was obviously like my personal chatter, and obviously spoken about the inner critic, but even just like my personal chatter with, in my relationships, friendships, relationship with my partner, you can, if you're on a negative bias, you can, I guess, receive information and obviously, portray a different thought. And it's just changing that mindset. I think that I have like a process now of, I think, sitting on information a lot more, and instead of just reacting, and just processing and understanding the thoughts, I guess, a bit more.
Yeah. Well, the thoughts don't really they don't support us, right? Thoughts are, again, we always talk about a lot of these behaviors are learned behaviors. They're not even who we are, and it's being able to identify that these behaviors are not who we are, and negative bias is normal, by the way. Let's for our audience, it is normal. We all have negative bias. It's about catching ourselves. And you think about it. I mean, how often do we stop to think about what we think about? Think about it. Not very often, right? Lots of thinking words right there. And we tend to do that too much. I think we do tend to spend a lot of time in our head and thinking. And this is why in our practice, we talk about listening with our heart, not with our ears. So when we listen with our heart, you hear differently. And so this is even in a practice for me outside of the mentoring sessions as well. When I listen with my heart and when I see with my heart, look with my heart, it's completely different. I see and hear different things. But if we listen with the mind, we're listening with the old chatters, with the old negative biases, with the old thoughts. And of course, we're going to keep repeating these patterns and get stuck in a loop. And so these are like you see, these can be transferable in any environment, whether you're a mother, whether you're a sales representative, whether you're a corporate CEO, whatever that may be, because it starts and ends with you, right? So if you want to change your environment, then you need to change you, because that's all you have control over. I'd love to see what kind of changes have people said to you? Like, since you've been doing this program, so I'll go to Hugo first. Has anyone said, God, you've changed, or this has influenced you in some way, shape, or form?
I have had someone say, not so much on me, but just that was a really good conversation. And they'd never said anything like that before. And I'd just been more aware of what was going on. I wasn't even trying to articulate better questions or anything. I was just like, oh, I'm asking this kind of question, and that's the response that's coming. And I think that's just one that comes out for me.
And were you was that, because we talk about playing the observer role as often as possible, were you being the observer of the conversation rather than being in it in your mind and answering, like you said, instead of being reactive to a conversation, were you sitting back and observing what's taking place in the kind of a holistic approach?
A little bit. I think I think part of my mind was in that observer place, and then a part of me was just still somewhat engaged in a similar manner. I think still a little more distant, a little more conscious, but it was sort of two things going on at the same time. Because I wasn't even trying to do anything. It was just I'd just been doing all this coaching stuff, and it was having a natural ripple effect, I suppose.
And how different do you feel about you, Hugo? So we were talking about external. Has anyone seen any changes within you externally? What about internally? How do you feel about you?
I think there's certainly more. I would say two main pieces. One is more calm, because there was that realization of, oh, it's the human. It's you've already got it all here, and that's been I remember the moment that came in during a session, and that's just stayed as a sort of backdrop. And the other piece I would say is, I think something I mentioned towards the beginning, was having something that I felt pretty vulnerable about and judged about, and then having that being pulled apart a little bit has done something in terms of, I think I question more often, is this even true? Sort of, am I even seeing this the way it is? Is there a bigger, more compassionate kind of perspective on this? And so it's sort of like, it's just shaking up isn't quite the right word, but it's just it's like things were locked into place, and it's like oil's getting between, and it's moving a little more. And that's a pretty interesting experience, sort of having your reality be slightly more fluid in some ways. And the internal experience of that is one of more kindness. Is that when there's the judgment going, okay, there are other perspectives of kindness here. And again, it's not something that I'm necessarily trying to do, which I find really fascinating, right? It's not like, oh, I'll apply this technique now because I'm feeling, it's just like, oh, okay, there's that shift that happened, and now there's this organic sort of ripple effect going on. And I'm just like, cool, okay, let's see this play out.
Oh, it's beautiful. And you mentioned about are there any certain methodologies that you lean into the most in the coaching program, or you're just going with what's present in the room? Because I know that there's some coaches that like a certain, it might be CBT, or it might be, different methodologies, the way that they approach it. Is there anything specifically that you go with that you prefer?
I think I tend to, and I think this is part of my previous training, I tend to focus and most naturally go towards what's going on in the body. What's the energy coming up? How does that sort of, what's the inner world? Very much. And yeah, I'd say that's the key piece that I've taken away, and finding how to work in that way just by asking questions and being in conversation and not having to do anything complex and nuanced. Just, okay, I'm here. Okay, great. Next piece. Okay. And what about that? And how does that work? And that's fun and exciting, and what comes most natural.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing. Because there's lots of different methodologies, or, I always say you walk away with a toolbox, but at the end of the day, it's what you do with it and how you use it. It's up to you. Everyone's going to be different. And I think it's really important to work with what's feels the best or the most appropriate for the coachee, and what's in the room at the same time. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to go over to you now, Jordan. Have you had anyone external of you asking you, what have you done differently? Or there's been a change within you? Have you seen that others have said, this program has influenced you in some way, shape or form?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, in my relationship, I'm a very structured, rigid person. I'm very black and white in things in life. And the one big change is introducing a bit of gray in my life and accepting that. Obviously, I like to, I guess, control as much as I can, but doing this has just opened me up to be a little less hard on myself, and just open to just, not being so particular and yeah. So I think that's helped a lot. Yeah, with my relationship as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And what about yourself? Like, how do you feel about you during this program, after this program? What's some of the shifts that have happened with you? Like, how do you feel about you?
Straight off the bat, confidence. Like if we went to the start of this year and I was to do this podcast, I would probably just laugh. It wouldn't be a reality for me. So I think little things like that, and there's more to that in the professional aspect as well. But just, I guess I'm not listening to that inner critic, and I really am just trying to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I think there's a lot of growth in that. So that for sure.
I love the fact that you even brought that up. We say that all the time, isn't it? It's about really getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where the magic happens. And, our brain doesn't like change, right? So we are going to avoid change as often as we can. And so, Jordan, when you were talking about mindset, I'd like to unpack that, because I'm curious as well. I'm sure our audience is like, well, what specifically are you happy to share? Maybe a little bit about when you notice that Bob comes up. What does Bob say? How do you actually deal with Bob? Like, what do you say or do with Bob? Like, when you've got this psychological archetype, you see it's getting in your way and stopping you from doing the very thing you need to do. What do you do?
Well, it's really just flipping that negative bias to like a positive. Instead of just being like, thinking about everything that can go wrong, it's really just focusing on, what, at the end of the day, I'm going to go and I'm going to do my best. And you just learn from the experience. And I've got like a crystal bracelet, and whenever these moments do come up, it's as simple as just, I guess, grounding yourself. I grab it and I just go, you know what, it is what it is. Do your best, and that's all you can do. Instead of kind of just sitting on that negative, like, oh, what if you say this? What if you do this? What if you drop the ball? And just don't worry about it. Just do it.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you even talked about what's going right. And we tend to always focus what's going wrong, what could go wrong. What about focusing on all the things that could go right? Yeah.
Exactly.
And so therefore since you've been able to control Bob, your mindset has shifted. You've seen a change in your behavior, in the way that you approach life.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's like the one thing that I've heard that I really sit with is like that realization that your thoughts do really impact your feelings and then bring on your behaviors. And I think that if you're in a constant state of negative thoughts that bring on negative feelings that bring up, you know, behaviors that don't really align with you, like just changing that and changing that thought, you know, yeah, brings a lot.
Yeah, and it's easier said than done, right? Because you've got to be in the moment. And this is going back to what you were saying, Hugo. Now you look at these yogis and these shamans, and we're in awe of their presence, but it's because they are in presence, right? So we're attracted by their beingness, being in the present moment, and that's what we need to do to be able to catch these psychological archetype when they take over. What about you, Hugo? How do you catch yours? So when you're getting in your own way, what's your trick? Like, how do you help with changing the mindset and therefore changing your behavior?
Okay, let me see if I can put words to this, because it's more of it's like an inner thing, but I suppose it's sort of trying to, or just allowing myself to drop into where that's coming from. And this actually, this is something that's interesting, because I think previously I would have gone, okay, what's the source of this? How can I change it? And now it's more of a dropping into sort of energetically, where's it coming from? How's it showing up? And then just being with that, and even bringing love to that and compassion to that without trying to force the outcome, without trying to. And there's a really different transformation that happens, because it's like you've got transformation of, let's say, behavior, or sort of showing up a bit differently, which can be phenomenal, right? Don't get me wrong, those things can be awesome. Even sort of subconscious change can be really phenomenal, but I feel like there's a deeper, it comes back to that human thing. It's a different, almost soul element to it. And being present with it, bringing in that love, that compassion, again, like you said, sort of drops you out of your head into your heart, into your beingness. And then from there, it's just a intuitive process of asking questions. What's this about? What does this need? How can I best work with this? Not how can I best change this and get rid of it so that I can get on with my day the way I had planned this morning. And in that, there's that beauty of there's inherent kindness that comes with that shift. Because even the thing of I'm going to change it has an element of conflict to it, an element of judgment, right? And is that thing that I think I heard you say in one of the first masterclass, or maybe even in the intro, was the thing of non-judgment. And I was like, yeah, cool, no, non-judgment. And I was like, oh, right. Like just that, how deep down that goes and how prevalent it is. So again, it's one of those things where it's sort of that all of those concepts are just gradually seeping in deeper and deeper and deeper, and then it becomes that being thing. Did that answer the question? Because that's
Sure
kind of
did.
an intuitive.
I loved it. And it's so true. And that's our three principles, right? Non-judgment, non-resistance, and non-attachment. And non-judgment is really important, because even the thought of wanting to change something, you're judging something that is not right, and therefore you think you need to fix it up. But allowing it to be, acknowledging it and sit with it, that's where change and true transformation takes place. But the moment you step into the room and say, I need to change this about myself, then you're actually unconsciously projecting you're broken. And no one is broken. No one is broken. If anything, in our sessions, we always talk about what is it that we need to let go of because of all of these learnt behaviors. So I love the fact that you talked about the non-judgment. And then let's talk about the non-resistance. The non-resistance is what to you, Jordan, I'm going to go to you. When you think about resisting, because I know that sometimes in our coaching sessions, we resist really standing in our truth, or resist what's taking place, or our mind will get in the way, and we resist even answering a question, right? So how do you then apply it to be less resistant to what is, and allowing yourself to really truly be what you are experiencing.
Is this like from the point of view as like a coachee
Yeah, as a coachee,
or a coach?
wherever you'd like to go, as a coachee or a coach.
Well,
Talk
like
about both perspectives if you like.
well, no, for me, like it's really just I think being present. I think like just sitting in the moment and being present with what is in the room. I found like again, me being trying to control as much as I can and being very structured. You try and preempt and you try and like, I guess, have it all in a box and organized when really like you go into it and you can't be too organized. Do you know what I mean? You got to go, you just got to listen and you got to go with the flow and the feelings and what's within the room, which for me was hard to say the least. But it's something that I learned that is, yeah, just sitting there and being present has been very powerful for me.
And have you found that that you've transferred that learning across other areas of your life about being present, about not letting go of control?
That is something I'm definitely working on. I would not say that I'm there yet, but I'm actively working on it. It's something that I've identified for sure, and it's something that I want to work with. Um, and it's been with me for so long, and it's going to take work. But I guess I'm putting in the work, and yeah, I'm willing to make the change.
Yeah, and you know, it's a change. Obviously, if you've been doing it for a long time, it can take some time. But the
Mm,
moment we see it, it's really hard to unsee it, isn't it? Once you see exactly what you're doing, and I know, Jordan, you've had a couple of those moments where you've seen it, you're like, I've never saw that.
mm,
Once you see it, it's really hard to unsee. And then, of course, there's going to be a domino effect where it just starts changing. It might not be a massive change straight away, but you're doing these small shifts over time that is becoming obviously a bigger impact as a whole.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And then I guess you just look at what other aspects of life that you want to apply that to.
And what other areas of your life can you apply that to when you can see that in control when you're saying about, so you're entering the sessions, you're
Mhm.
understanding that it's all about being present in the moment and allowing to whatever's surfacing in the room to surface. And you, like you said, thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability. That's been really tough for you, right? Because you've always like, there has to be, these have got to be the questions, it's got to be the outcome. It's, I guess
Yeah.
it goes a little bit to what you're saying, Hugo, this process. There is no process. It's about the human, right? It's about the other person being in there. So how have you transferred that? How have you been able to transfer that in other areas apart from the coaching?
Um, well, I think, like I've said before, you carry it with friendships, with relationships, in your professional life, in everything. You just step away from being in here, which I am all the time, and really just silencing that down and just being within the moment. I feel like we're always caught up in what's coming or what was rather than what is.
Mm.
And you can use that in anything in life. So with everything and anything. Yeah.
So true. And it's easier said than done, right? To be in the present moment all the time because you, like you said, we can get caught up in the either the what should be to what was. We get caught up in the past and sometimes in the present, which we know in coaching that we do that. We externalize things all the time.
Mhm.
It's when we stop externalizing and let go of the external stuff. And go within. And that's it. Most of the times when you ask somebody a question, they all talk about external events,
Mm.
external things, but it is uncomfortable to go in. It is uncomfortable initially because we've never done it. But once we go in there, don't you find yourself curious to want to learn more? I'm just curious, Jordan, do you want to learn more now that you've already just hit the tip of the iceberg and you know there's more layers to it?
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's multiple bobs going on that I haven't even dealt with yet. But absolutely, you become very curious to what else is there. Do you know what I mean? Because you've lived in such a way for so long, and then you start to challenge it and get a better understanding. You then start to ask the question of, what else is there?
Yeah.
Mm.
And so, Jordan, are there any memorable interactions or moments with your group that you would like to share, whether it's about yourself or just as a whole? What have you experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and Hugo, you might resonate with this, but I think our last session together was probably for me one of our favorite in a lot of senses. I think for me, it was the second time being a coach, and the first time I was a coach, it was a nervous experience and questionable. And I think that the whole moment together that Hugo and I had into the flow and effect afterwards, the catch up we had afterwards, the whole 2 hours that we had together was just, for me, my favorite, I think, mentoring session we've had. I think that, it was a realization that it's like a little family almost, you know what I mean? Because we had all seen the change from everyone. And yeah, it was like a big winning moment. It was like a proud family moment. It was really sweet.
Hugo, did you want to say anything on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I concur that that was also for me quite the memorable moment. And let's say sort of energetically, it is a kind of just a warmth, kindness that's there. And, I even remember as we've been going through the workbooks, sometimes it would be me and sometimes it would be someone else in the group would write to, the other two going, I don't get this thing, or I'm having this challenge with this thing. Like, what's your perspective on this? Or how do you handle that? And it was just this really wonderful thing of we're all sort of a bit spread out geographically, but we're all just kind of there when we need it and supporting. And it's been a wonderful thing of a presence that isn't sort of dominating and we have to always be in contact and it be phenomenal every time. It's just, we're there, we've got you. Okay, next thing. And that's just been a really comforting, special experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you were, and maybe I misunderstood as well. You were alluding to the Q&As that take place where you've got people from all over the world that come and join these Q&As. They're all at different levels, like you said, and some are starting, some started, almost October last year, and there's a new group coming in again. So I'd love to hear it from you from the Q&As. What exactly takes place? Because that's another question I get all the time. What other? So we've really unpacked the mentoring sessions, but what about the Q&As? What do you get out of them? And I'll open up to whoever wants to go about
I
answer
can
that
go
question.
because I've got a couple of things there. I mean, for me, a big part of it, which I love, is just being able to ask some question on, I don't get this thing, or how would you do this, or what about this situation? And you just get however many people are on the call giving their advice. And some people are towards the end of the program, some people have just started. And then you've always got Andoni, who's there sort of holding that space. And then if there aren't any questions that anyone there specifically wants answered, then we just bring in sort of scenarios of, okay, imagine you've got a client who's dealing with this. What are the ways that you would deal with it? Or it might be a question that was asked in another group that's brought in, that it helps sort of take the theory and the ideas that we've learned and bring them down into a bit more of an embodied, deep understanding of it. And you've got, really good insights. I was talking to another coach a while back where one of the biggest insights he had came from that Q&A, where it was like, I'm in this situation, this is coming up, and just one question was asked, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, got it. And his whole sort of coaching changed. And, there was a big moment for me in one of the Q&As where a particular scenario was given, and it was someone, I think, I can't remember the specifics in detail, but it was a rough situation of like a single mother, lost her job, having trouble finding another job, dealing with all this stress. What would you do? And so we had a very brief chat on that, and I was like, oh, wait, I want a bit more of like how you would deal with this situation. That seemed really intense for me. And something that someone said was, I think this was actually Andoni that said it, was, can you be the calm in the storm? If you judge that situation as really big, the way I was viewing it, then you're adding to it. I was like, oh my, like I didn't even think of that as a possibility. It was sort of like outside of, reading the different theories and the understandings. It helps it go deeper and have a broader sort of 360 understanding of what's going on, how can you approach it. And, you know, you'll have someone say, well, maybe ask these kinds of questions, and someone say, well, maybe also these. And, you know, I know there are people in there who have a lot of experience just working in corporate. And so I think last time there was a question that came up around how would you use this in a corporate setting? And someone answered, oh, maybe like this. And then someone else, well, you also need to be careful of this because I've seen that technique sort of have problems in this area. So you also get the experience of people outside of their coaching knowledge, which has been really, really beneficial. Again, sort of bring that into the real world of how do you do that. So that's a bit of the Q&As. Yeah.
Very good. And it's true. We have lots of corporates, we have psychologists, we have a lawyer, we have all sorts of individuals, wonderful human beings. And that's what we're all here. We're, at the end of the day, regardless of what title you carry, we're all humans, right? And that's why we love the fact that you alluded to the whole human experience. Jordan, if you were to give someone considering joining the program some advice, what would you say to them?
Put the self-doubt, put the critic aside, just do it, get uncomfortable, find the comfort within the moment. Like, I feel like there's just so much opportunity and growth on the other side of that fear, and that would hold people back. Yeah, I just get into it. Simple as that, really.
Yeah, beautiful. Any tips that you would like to share with a prospective student?
Any tips? Be open-minded. I think active listening, becoming a good listener is inherent, like it becomes through the program. But yeah, I think just being open-minded and being, I guess, comfortable with being vulnerable. Like you said, it is a safe space, and it is a vault. And just realizing that and just being open with the people around you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. What about you, Hugo? Is there anything that any insights or tips that you would give a prospective student? And just also from your experience, like doing the workbooks and like through the process for you, has it been?
I think one of the key things was trusting that you'll get there. I remember at the beginning, I was looking at how much there was to learn. I was like, and the time I was like, I'm not going to get there. Like, that's just, and you were like, just trust me, you got this. And I was like, okay. And then sure enough, you know, by, I think it was the third time I had a shot in the coaching seat, I was like, oh, cool. Okay. That's come through. So yeah, I'd say even though it can sometimes feel overwhelming, just little steps, have a bit of trust, you'll be right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is one of those things, because a lot of people ask a lot of questions about the program and what's involved, and it is very much a self-paced process. Obviously there's a community, and I think that's the most important thing I like to really bring up is the community, the connection, the networking that takes place is beautiful. It really is. So any final words before we wrap up the show?
I think on just touching on that community, I think, like, obviously you have your mentoring sessions, and as I said, you create a family, but the community goes so much further than that with master classes, and, you know, you breakout rooms, you meet new people, you get different methods of coaching, different ideas. There's just so much open dialogue and support, and, you know, it's from all around the world. The access is incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And have either of you had external coaching, like from our students? Because we do have this as apart from the coaching that you say within the mentoring, and then with all the other things that we have, all these other workshops and activities that we do together from all over the world. There's also those that are finalising their certification. They have to hand in 2 recordings, and so we go back into the community and say who would like to have some coaching. Has anyone experienced any of those sessions? And if so, you don't need to go into who did it, but what was your experience from it?
Yeah, it was just sort of digging deep into stuff that I had present. I was like, I know I need to deal with that at some point. And then going in there. And I think something that was really interesting that came about was it was something that I needed another perspective on, almost. Not for someone to give it to me, but for me to say, like, this is that. And then they're like, are you sure that's, they'll just question that. I was like, oh, okay, hang on. There's like so much else going on. So that was a pretty interesting experience that, again, for me, was a really interesting moment that I couldn't have got there. I think it would have taken a lot more time to get there by myself. It's that two-person tango.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. What about you, Jordan? You said you had an experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had about 3 or 4 sessions, I think. But it's so beneficial because as you're going through the process of obviously becoming a coach, you get exposed to a different method of coaching. Everyone's obviously got their own way and their own approach and different questions. So you get that, but then you're also getting coached. So you're getting a different insight on what you want to work on. And even for my sessions, I remember coming out of the sessions, I'm like, wow, like I never thought of it like that. And just having someone else ask the right question or look at it in a different perspective, you come out of it and you go, wow. And it changes your whole perspective on, whatever it is that you're working on. So it's like a win-win. It's a great system.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. So we are going to wrap up now because we're nearly on the hour. I just want to say thank you both so very much for coming on the show. I know it takes a lot of courage to come on the show. As you said, you build your confidence, and you probably would not have done this, at the start of the year. And so I'm grateful that you both came and shared your story, because I think as we share our stories, that's what sticks with other people, is the stories. And I think it's really important for us to do this, and this is new for us as well, to get the coaches that have gone through the program on the show, because everyone has their own experience, and I can sit here and say how lucky I am to witness all of this, but I think it has a greater benefit hearing it from you both sharing your story. And for those that are listening or watching, if there is an interest of you wanting to change, and it might be that you feel stuck, you don't know where to from here. You want to change. Well, this could be just for you as a personal professional development process. If you're a leader and you're leading a team of, 10, 15, 20, thousands of people, then I've seen transformation take place in these rooms with some executives that have transformed their teams, being able to pass this knowledge on and be able to change culture, which is big. I've seen salespeople come and do this program and become better at sales, because they know now it's not about selling, it's about the human. It's about asking the right questions to be able to achieve the outcome. And then if you want to do it to become a coach, this is the perfect foundation, perfect platform for you to become a coach. You can become, and we have some coaches that have already done coaching programs. They've come in here to get their certification, the ICF certification, which is International Coaching Federation, which is the biggest in the world. And we've also had people who just want to make a difference and help others to come and do this, to become a coach. And so they're doing it to become a coach. And once they complete, they can come back into the ecosystem. So we have this beautiful the Coach and Grow app, where our coaches come and work with us. So it becomes, a student. When I say you're a student for life, you're a coach for life, if you want to stay with us that long, of course, right? And there's always events. So once you come on as a coach, you can come back and do these master classes and all these events for free. It doesn't cost you. You pay that one time, and that's for life. I don't know anybody else that offers that. And we have a coaching library that is kept up to date all the time, because research is, when we're talking about the brain and psychology and the neuroscience and evolution and expansion and beingness, it's forever evolving. So we are also ever evolving. So if that is a calling for you, if you feel called to it, please come and join us. We'd love to see you. And once again, I want to say thank you for our viewers, our listeners, our audience. We wouldn't be here without you. So thank you very much. And thank you once again, Jordan and Hugo, for coming on the show. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you.